Hi, my name is Mark Bernard. I'm a monetary economist. In this video, I want to talk about how Russia is building its industrial complex to prepare for a 100-year geopolitical challenge. It's a challenge to the world. And if we want to make the world a better place, which we do, we should take it seriously. There's evidence coming from Russia, specifically from the Ukrainian special intelligence, that they are building an industrial complex which is beyond comprehension. Let me explain. In the 1940s and in 1944 and 1945, Albert Speer, with his industrial policy in Germany, they peaked at industrial production in July of 1944. With all the bombings and all the conflict and all the destruction, July 1944, they produced in 1 month 3,000 aircraft, Messerschmitt, etc. 1945, in other metrics, they were peaking in production, despite the rubble you see around them. Why is that? Because it takes years to get an economy to be organized for an industrial military way. Years and years. Russia is just beginning to do this, okay? They have drone factories. Everything is east of the Urals, like Tatarstan, produces thousands of drones. And I extrapolated out that if they continue this production on the current trajectory, in 17 years, they could produce 10 million drones. Maybe not at that specific factory, but if they extrapolated out what they're doing. Everything about Russian economics is about scalability. And it's a very interesting conversation. So the Tsar of Russia obviously lived in Germany, in Berlin, and studied German and modeled his economy after the German economy. And he modeled it in a couple of ways. If there's a labor shortage, no problem. You treat people like cattle, which is something I am very much against. Bring low-skilled, tempt them in. You know, in Germany, they used forced labor. This is similarly forced labor by enticing people from Africa, India, the Middle East with student visas, and then they find themselves working in these drone factories. But again, it's about scalability. And what this means is the Russians tend to find one or two things that really, really work and then just scale it up. And they have the ability to do that. When I used to play this game Civ 2 in the second generation, you could build a unit called Fanatics. And if you just scale that up, you could game the system and win at the deity level. And I played other games, obviously board games like there were these Global War and produced by SBI and World War III produced by SBI. You know, I would find one unit that was like, or two units that were types of production units that were super optimal in terms of the cost value. And then I would just forget about the metrics of all these complexities. I would just scale those up until it overwhelmed the enemy. And that is a similar idea. It's in the Russian cultural mentality of scaling things up. In a gameplay, it's not a bad strategy. And that's what they're doing with this economic military-industrial complex. Another example of that is, what do you know? AI, crypto mining, supercomputers. They found a way to circumvent GPU manufacturers like NVIDIA, because there's now cloned Chinese GPU and CPU, GPU probably being more important, manufacturers for multi-parallel processing and complex computations. And you need two things. You need cold weather and you need energy, cheap energy. You could scale that up until there's no tomorrow. They could dominate in Siberia, which they're doing, the crypto market to generate cash internally, because their general economic strategy is economic independence from the rest of the world. So they're looking at ways to scale it up with crypto mining, and they also use that for, hacking and influencing the political system and destabilizing the West very easily in Siberia. This is what Stalin did. He put entire factories on rail cars, huge Iron Age rail cars, and moved them east of the Urals. And that's what he did. You can look it up in history. So we've got lessons from history he's taking, the Tsar of Russia, from Stalin, from the H guy in Germany, Speer. His economics minister is Maxim Rezhetnikov. I probably said it in a Polish way. It's Cyrillic, and I translate it in a funny way. We'll call him Maxim. He's got the same idea of scalability, scaling up Russian economic production, finding one or two niches which he can mass produce and game the system. Now, the problem here is, like Karl von Clausewitz said, war is just a continuation of policy by other means. So if they declare a negotiated settlement, somebody, wants to be Moscow number 1, Washington number 2 in the world, negotiated settlement. If they're willing to do that, that's not a problem for the Russians because they have their eye on the ball, 100-year policy of geopolitical world domination. It doesn't have to be occupation, but they want to continually to weaken these democracies. And they're scaling their economy up in this two specific examples, drone production and crypto mining production, as well as AI production, and take advantage of opportunities there for the future robotics, using the inputs from Chinese GPU. And all they have to do is sell energy to India, yes, to India and China, and not only fuel their current efforts, but to fuel, more importantly, these long-term efforts. So if they can get a negotiated settlement, a break, they'll be number 1, Moscow, and, Washington will be number 2. And that's the reality, because this peace settlement will allow them to continue to gear up. And like I said at the beginning, Albert Speer did that. He knew that it would take 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Russians have 100 years. Why not? That's the way they think in terms of their current geopolitical ambitions. Again, it's not a comment on the Russian people. It's the geopolitical ambitions of the current regime in Moscow, the Tsarist regime. What can the world do? Well, I've given a few ingredients. If I was a Russian, I'd be slacking off. I would be not consuming. The more we can hold strong and hold the line and maybe not cave in a negotiated settlement, but increase the sanctions, the more chance that the people of Russia can bring positive change to Russia somehow. Got an issue that 80%, up to 80%, according to University of Colorado, support this regime in Moscow. The majority even being in the countryside, 40% being women, which is, a little bit puzzling to me, and 60% men. Because women often are the carriers of the next generation for various reasons. So what is the solution? I guess the solution is, 1, Europe has to stay strong. 2, we have to be aware, because awareness, as I said, is almost synonymous with the ability to change. Unless you're aware of a behavior, and I'm talking about a world community collective unconsciousness behavior, then it would be very hard to change it. We have to be aware that these massive industrial complexes are mushrooming in Siberia. Drones, AI, robotics, crypto, these things are sprouting up everywhere like an autumn, after an autumn of rainy summer, autumn mushroom festival in the deep forest. They're just everywhere. And the way to stop it is keep the pressure economically on Russia, so the populace, because the general population of Russia is declining in standard of living. We know this. I've given you evidence, is to keep that pressure up. Don't let up. Don't put your head in the sand and be an ostrich. Because just like Stalin did, and the Tsar of Russia right today is no different than Stalin, he's moving everything east of the Urals, almost undetectable. And if it is detectable, a lot of it's underground, like the Germans did, Albert Speer. They could only a direct hit on an underground steel factory could destroy this steel. Even if it was detectable, because we have advanced technology. It's inaccessible. We can't get to it. It's thousands and thousands of miles and kilometers away from, harm's way. So my recommendation is keep the pressure up, keep it up enough so the Russian population awakens and becomes aware. It's going to be hard. Now, the second alternative is Ukraine plays chess. That's what they're doing. They're not doing it like this brutal scaling up of one-dimensional economics. They're doing it in a multifaceted way. And multifaceted, complex, plugged into a free market can override strategy one of the Russians. So we've got hope. We've got a lot of hope in this next year because I believe Ukraine is doing things silently, okay, with a big stick. And that's all I'm going to leave it at. But economically, Ukraine is aware of what's happening, and they're trying to do an end run about the Russian scaling up idea. A lot of general talk, but in terms of specifics, I think you get the point. Imagine a Stalin who scales up, fueled by tremendous fossil fuel demand from China and India, specifically India a lot, to create destabilization in the West. And the way to prevent it is don't cave. Keep the pressure up. My name is Mark Bernard. I'm a monetary economist. Have a great day. Thank you very much.